They were out early one morning, panning in the stream for gold, surrounded by the rising mountains. Old prospector with a tale for two, he brushed around in the pan, and pointing out what lay within was ordinary sand. He began with his story about 20 years before, and a younger man who sought his fortune. With a tear or two he told of searching for his treasure, but making known the gold he sought was ordinary pleasure. There were years of doing without, and there were years of plenty. He started thinking that life was never steady, excepting when the bills came in and he had no money to pay. Whiskey had never tasted better ordinarily. Concluded his story as it filled the air with a laugh, saying how he found the Lord and Savior, and how he found the river of life by which his day unfolds, and pointing out what stands within is not ordinary gold, and pointing out what stands within is not ordinary gold. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Through His word we can see His wonders, signs and miracles of His love. We can return His love with devotion, standing on His word before all men. We are His beloved and His chosen, walking in this life renewed with peace. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. upon His promises. Through His Word we can see His wonders, signs and miracles of His love. We can return His love with devotion, standing on His word before all men. We are His beloved and His chosen, walking in this life renewed with peace. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Trust in God, believe upon His promises. Believe upon His promises.
Hello, I'm Mark Wallace. This is True North Studio, and today the topic is post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth. We've all heard of post-traumatic stress. Today we're going to learn about post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth is that positive personal change that happens after we struggle through a very hard life event, a personal failure, or some sort of trauma, and come out better on the other side. Growing through any problem leads to a deeper appreciation of life, a new sense of personal strength, and an expanding of one's faith. In their time with Jesus, the apostles had dealt with some epic failures and navigated through some stressful situations that would crush most people. Jesus knew that if they were ever going to carry on His ministry after He was gone, they had to stop making the same human mistakes so they could relish in some post-traumatic growth. O ye of little faith. Now Jesus dropped the term, O ye of little faith, 5 times to point out the 5 flawed thought patterns and 5 common fears that suppress our ability to believe. The term little faith is the compound Greek word oligopistos. Oligo describes either size or time, and pistos means faith or belief. Put them together, and Jesus was saying His apostles either had teeny tiny little faith, or He was telling them, you're acting like part-time believers. You're spiritually immature. Now we know that because Jesus handpicked His apostles, they were already big believers, highly capable, and the cream of the crop in Israel. So I find it hard to believe that their faith was small, like that teeny tiny mustard seed they just hadn't grown enough. An athlete must work super hard to stay in shape. A special forces team must train together constantly. A musician must rehearse to keep up their musical chops. A marathoner must put in the weekly miles. A salesman's got to make his calls. For anyone to stay at the top of their game, they've got to put in the time. Jesus knew that if His apostles could get this little faith thing sorted out, they would then be able to go on to do even greater works than He did. And we can too. John 14:12. Lesson 1, growing past anxiety. Why be anxious about your future, O ye of little faith? Very early in His ministry, Jesus noticed that His disciples were having a bit of trouble dealing with their current life choice. They'd put their professions on hold. They'd left their homes and families. They were no longer earning a steady income. Each of them had left everything near and dear so they could travel with and learn from Jesus. But now they were beginning to worry about how smart this lifestyle would be in the long run. They were losing faith in their decision. Jesus knew that this kind of worry, this anxiety, would eventually freeze them in their tracks, stopping all forward progress. He also knew that if given enough time, anxiety could even open them up to the debilitating spirit of fear. 2 Timothy 1:7. Here's where Jesus inserts his first little faith fix, giving them their first growth spurt. Now, Jesus was finishing his epic Sermon on the Mount. He was on a roll. He reached a crescendo in the teaching when he busts into a lesson on stress. Matthew 6:25, I say unto you, take no thought, or don't be anxious for your life, which ye shall eat, or which ye shall drink, nor yet for your body, which ye shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body more than raiment? 26, behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? This is mankind's most basic concern: food, shelter, and clothing. It's hard not to secretly stress over how our basic needs will be met. That's where people spend most of their personal thought time. We also know that first world and third world worries are different, but they're both real. Third world. How on earth will I feed my family today? First world. I'm kind of stressed out. I sure hope what I ordered on Amazon arrives today. I really want my outfit to match the outfit for the wedding to match. Well, both of those concerns are real. The context of this first point is stressing over the stuff we want or need. Now watch how Jesus skillfully guides us through man's most basic fear. Matthew 26:27. Which of you, by taking thought, by worrying, can add 1 cubit, that's about 18 inches, unto his stature? Jesus can't be talking about growing taller. This is a very poor translation. The context is how to deal with our basic worries of life, not how tall you are. I never sit at the dinner table, lean forward and say to Josephine, Joe, if I could just grow a foot or so taller before I retire, we could really begin to pay off our bills and travel a bit more. The word stature in verse 27 can just as easily be translated length of life. People do sit at the dinner table and talk about having a long, healthy, and prosperous life, don't they? Jesus is saying that all the worry in the world won't add an inch to your time on earth. Plus, we all know that too much stress will remove a few inches from our lives. Josephine sometimes says, that situation took a chunk out of me. Matthew 6:28. And why take ye thought, or why stress out for raiment, that's clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, if God so clothe the grass of the field, that's the plants in your garden, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? Well, this is our first O ye of little faith, oligopistos. This will be on the test. Anxiety about God possibly not supplying our needs is what holds back more believers than anything else. It is the world's most common concern. If we can conquer this worldly stressor, then we can blaze through step 1 in post-traumatic growth. Jesus knew that his disciples hadn't yet put in the mental training time of building the Word in their hearts to avoid the normal life-limiting stress that comes from anticipating lack. Now here's what to do. Matthew 6:31. Therefore take no thought. That means stop worrying, saying, what shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or wherewithal shall we be clothed? First, stop talking about lack. Just stop it. Verse 32, for after all these things do the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father, he knoweth that ye have need of these things. These financial worries are what all the good people of the world stress over. But we believers must remind ourselves that God is keenly aware of our finances and that nagging health situation that haunts us. I fall into this oh woe is me personal pity party every now and again myself. Thankfully, my wife calls me out on it and reminds me of how God has miraculously blessed us so many thousands of times in the past. Jesus tells us that in order to grow past our anxiety, we first need to stop confessing the negative and remind ourselves that God cares. Here's part 2 of lesson 1, Matthew 6:33. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Before we do a million internet searches and spend hours in YouTube University, we first go to God. We ask, and God supplies. Period. Now note, most people have trouble believing this. Seeking the kingdom of God is not a place. It's a godly expectation. We drive our minds to the word that deals with our specific need. Seeking his righteousness means chasing down what is right and true and loving. Jesus is telling us that all our need is already met by God. It's already yours. So go get it. Go get it. Like a good teacher, Jesus repeats the answer here. Matthew 6:34. Take therefore no thought for the morrow. Don't be anxious about tomorrow, for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Push through whatever you need to handle today. Tomorrow will still be there waiting for you. It's going to be there. First, we go hard to the Word. We seek God like a pro athlete trains. We put in the time to build a positive expectation. And for God's sake, stop talking so much about your problems. That just busts down your believing and messes with everyone else around you. It's hard work to stay positive while battling a negative headspace. It goes against every grain of society. Jesus' first lesson on little faith, how to battle the genesis of all lack, is to put in the time to believe that God will always be there when we need him. So stop complaining and stop worrying and go enjoy your abundance. That's how we grow through anxiety. Lesson 2, outgrow cowardice. Why are you so afraid to manifest power, O ye of little faith? Now we take it up a notch. Our second cause of little or undeveloped faith is a little harder to solve than normal human financial anxiety. This is a step up in difficulty. This faith fix is for disciples only. This type of thinking can get somebody killed. When the pressure is really on, this next type of spiritual immaturity can manifest as spiritual cowardice. Let's look at number 2. Call it underpracticed faith. Matthew 8:23. And when he was entered into a ship, his disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great tempest in the sea. That means seismos. That's waves caused by an undersea earthquake. Insomuch that the ship was covered with waves, but he was asleep. See, after ministering healing to hundreds and hundreds all day, Jesus was wiped out. He was exhausted. He climbed into the ship, found a nice spot to lie down, rolled up his robe for a pillow, and conked out in seconds. While he was fast asleep and the apostles were busy scrolling through their social media, an undersea earthquake hit. And there are 2 fault lines that intersect under the small Sea of Galilee. And even today, those tremors can scare the daylights out of anyone unlucky enough to find themselves out on the water at that time. Waves caused by an earthquake move differently than large directional wind-blown waves. Earthquake waves move side to side and up and down, kind of like being in a giant washing machine during the agitation cycle. This type of water storm comes on so suddenly, it shocked even the seasoned boatmen who had grown up on that lake. Plus, do you think the time was kind of adversarial? Matthew 8:25, and his disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, Lord, save us, make this stop, we perish. Have you ever been caught out in a really bad storm and thought you were going to die? Verse 26, and he said unto them, why are ye so fearful? Meaning too timid to handle things. O ye of little faith. Then he arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. Shh. The word fearful is a Greek word that means spiritually timid. You're not sure of yourself, so someone else will need to handle it. The reason Jesus called them spiritual cowards and not simply frozen in fear is because none of them had the guts to be the first to step up and command the waves to calm down. Any of the apostles could have acted, should have commanded the storm to stop, but they didn't. They didn't. The fact that Jesus rebuked the disciples before he reproved the squall tells us that the lesson was bigger than the storm. The lesson was bigger than the storm. Matthew 8:27. But the men marveled, saying, "What manner of man is this, that even the winds and sea obey him?" That is exactly the manner of men Jesus needed his apostles to be, and us to be. Jesus needed his men to be bold enough to stifle the storm. He needed them to act when others won't, especially when others won't. Spiritual boldness takes practice, but it can be learned, must be learned. Stop waiting for someone else to minister healing. Stop waiting for others to calm whatever storm you find yourself in. You are the point man. You are the protector. Spiritually, you are the first responder. See the problem, fix the problem. See the problem, fix the problem. So how do we grow into this dominant role? Well, we can start small. Maybe stop procrastinating. Or just take out the trash. Talk to that neighbor who brings her dog to poop in your yard every morning. Ask for that raise. Stop waiting for someone else to do what you should be doing. Courage is learned, not genetic. As true disciples, we must be the ones to make the hard decision and take violent action when others just look at their shoes. I remember when my son Adam had just started walking, and we were visiting a relative in Texas who had a swimming pool. While socializing around the pool deck, I watched baby Adam run like the wind and jump into the blue water like he was an actor on Baywatch. But his now heavy diapers quickly pulled him under. And as he sunk, he looked up at me with his little blue eyes and reached out for me from underwater. I was frozen in time, but my dad just dove in, fully clothed, cowboy hat on, cigarette in his mouth, and pushed little Adam to the surface. This all happened in less than 2 seconds. During his 3 tours in Vietnam, he had trained himself to act instantly because seconds could mean life or death. Even though I only froze for half a second, that was not one of my finer moments. That's what the spirit of cowardice looks like. Hesitating, waiting for someone else to do what we should be doing. Even when caught on the water during an earthquake and having the pee-willies scared out of them, Jesus still needs them and us to be fearless. They must be instantly ready to manifest godly power. And for God's sake, never allow spiritual timidity. It could get someone killed. Maybe see my teaching on Timothy and the spirit of fear from a few weeks back. Little faith lesson number 2 is being bold enough to act when others wait. Post-traumatic growth is how we avoid spiritual cowardice. Lesson 3. Never second guess your miracle. Why are you second guessing your miracle, O ye of little faith? Remember, this is not small size faith. This is simply not having taken the time to grow your believing. A few more months have passed. They were now at maybe the halfway point of Jesus' ministry. The previous day, they had assisted Jesus in the feeding of 5,000 men plus women and children. There were a lot of people there. As fast as they could hand out the bread and fish, more kept appearing. It was a crazy fun miracle. Plus, there were 12 small basketfuls of leftovers. And everybody loves leftovers, don't they? By now, the apostles had grown exponentially. First, they had learned how not to be anxious concerning God supplying their needs. Next, they became less self-conscious, less hesitant, and more spiritually bold. Now they were ready for anything. At least they thought so. But Jesus knew they still had a bit to learn about the miraculous mindset. This brings us to our little faith post-traumatic growth point number 3. Matthew 14:22. And straightway Jesus constrained. That means he pressured his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. Jesus pushed hard to get his apostles to leave without him. This was an unusual request. He always traveled with them. Was he going to catch a ride on someone else's boat? Or maybe walk the shoreline the 8 miles up to Capernaum? Little did they know that Jesus was about to take their training to a whole new level. Matthew 14:23. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. In the midst of the sea means out in the middle of the lake. At its widest point, the Sea of Galilee is only 8 miles across. John 6:19 tells us they had rowed into the wind about 5 and 20 or 30 furlongs, 25 or 30 furlongs, which is about 3.5 miles or 6 kilometers. Mark 6:48 tells us, and when he saw them toiling and rowing, for the wind was contrary unto them. So after the crowd and the apostles left, Jesus needed some alone time and had been up on a little hill praying. Every now and then he took a peek to see how the boys were progressing across the lake. And from that hill, he could see their little lamp on the boat 4 miles away. Now, he'd been tracking them. And Jesus knew the wind made for some hard rowing. His boys had been at it all night. He also knew they were raised on that lake and had been in a million windstorms. No biggie. They'd spent many a nights on this stubborn lake. Now here's where God inspired Jesus to do something that was mind-boggling, something even he had never done, something no prophet had ever attempted. Matthew 14:25, and in the 4th watch of the night, that's between 3 and 6 a.m., that's before sunrise, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. Now we know Moses had split the Red Sea for the children of Israel to walk across on the seabed. Elijah and Elisha both split the Jordan River a few times so they could walk across and not get their new shoes wet. But Jesus was about to do something no human, even someone with the Spirit of God, had ever even considered doing. He started water walking. Now he must have triangulated his bearing with the lights on the Capernaum hills and the one that was on the boat, because from sea level you can only see maybe 3 miles because of the curvature of the earth. His men were almost 4 miles out. Jesus stepped on top of the wind-tossed waves, and this must have blown his mind a little bit too. Probably made him smile. But Jesus had developed the ability to focus his believing for long periods of time. This is what he had been trying to teach his disciples, that they really needed to extend their belief and focus, the time on their belief and focus. They needed to develop some long-term believing, not short-term faith. This was going to be an extended miracle. It would take some crazy focus. 26, and when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, tarasso, saying, "It's a spirit!" And they cried out for fear. They literally screamed. These men shrieked. Jesus had been water walking into the wind on moving whitecaps for maybe 2 or 3 hours, covering about 4 miles, up and down, up and down. That couldn't have been easy. He had started walking at about 3 a.m., so now it's 5 a.m. And I just thought he didn't get any sleep that night. The sun was just beginning to come up. Watch how the Gospel of Mark shows a very human side of Jesus, the fun side. He colors in this event by adding some humor. You've got to know that Jesus was a fun guy to hang out with. Mark 6:48 from the AMP says, he came to them walking on the sea and acted as if he intended to pass by them. Psych! Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Jesus smiled and acted like he was going to water walk right past the boat. They saw him. The apostles were not afraid of the windstorm. They were freaked out seeing what they thought was a devil spirit walking on the water near their boat. They all pointed and screamed simultaneously, "It's a spirit!" Well, so much for their learning their lesson about spiritual cowardice. I remember staying at my mom's house right after Josephine and I had taken a live advanced level training class that included instruction on dealing with devil spirits. Now, I think Joe was pregnant with Adam, our son Adam at the time, and we thought we were pretty darn sharp. We were pretty darn sharp after that training, let me tell you. Now, we were staying in my mom's guest bedroom that had dozens of my grandmother's sort of creepy oil paintings hung all over the walls. Now, for your information, as wonderful as my mom was, and she was, many of you met her, but Mom loved all things spiritual. Think astrology, Ouija boards, palm reading, you name it, she loved it. Well, in the middle of the night, Josephine shook me awake and said that Grandma's paintings were floating in the air over our bed. Now, without my glasses on, I couldn't see any of them. Or just maybe I didn't want to. But I did feel an evil presence that raised the hair on my neck. And, it was eerie. So out loud, I told the damn thing to leave. And it did instantly. We went back to sleep. But in the morning, the dozen or so paintings that were once on the walls were now all face down on the floor. Now, spirits can be kind of creepy. Now back to the apostles screaming like little kids in the schoolyard. Now, Matthew 14:27, but straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, be of good cheer. That means take courage. Take courage. It is I. It's me. Be not afraid. Be of good cheer is better translated take courage, or show some backbone, or grow a set. Grow a set, guys. Peter knew this was another Jesus test. So not wanting to hesitate this time, Matthew 14:28 says, and Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. Well, Peter, thinking he learned his lesson from the timidity earthquake exercise back in Matthew 8, jumped into action. Peter decided that he would never again let cowardice stop him from doing the miraculous. If it's really you, Jesus, and not some damn spirit, ask me to walk out to you. If you say I can do it, I am going to do it. You've got to know it was Peter's idea to walk on the water, on the windy water. Jesus humored him. Verse 29, and he, Jesus, smiled and said, come on out, Peter. And when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. Peter did it. Woohoo! He walked on the water just like Jesus was doing. Only Jesus had been water walking for maybe 2 or 3 hours. Talk about a believing focus. How far did Peter walk? You might want to ask. Well, we know that Jesus was close enough to hear, for them to see him and to hear him above the windstorm. So he must have been fairly close to the boat. So maybe 10 or 20 steps away. That's logical. Matthew 14:30, but when he, Peter, saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning, that means just starting to sink, he cried saying, Lord, save me! So here it was. Woohoo! Look at me, Jesus. I'm walking on the water. Oh, wait a second. What am I doing? I can't walk on water. Well, Peter let his believing focus slip into retrograde motion. He reverted back to his short-term faith. Verse 31, and immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And that means let your mind waver. The Greek word for doubt means to waver between two thoughts, to be double-minded. I can do this, wait, I can't do this. Peter second-guessed his miracle. Peter second-guessed his miracle. Remember this little faith, this incomplete believing comment was spoken to Peter, but all the apostles felt the full weight of Jesus' words. This is the third time he called them out on their spiritual immaturity. How far did Peter water walk? Probably 10 or 20 steps. Jesus had done it for 4 miles. Both take focus. Verse 32, and when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. Then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, of a truth, thou art the Son of God. Now I love how the other apostles high-fived Jesus, but ignored their buddy Peter. This had been kind of a traumatic yet invigorating experience for Peter, wouldn't you say? Jesus needed all his apostles to grow their believing so they too could navigate through any storm like he and Peter just did. That's John 14:12. He needed them to not procrastinate, but keep up a long-term believing focus as they attempt the miraculous. Lesson 1, always expect God to supply your every need every time. Lesson 2, don't be too timid to do the miraculous. Lesson 3 was very personal. Don't second guess your miracle. Lesson 4, afraid to think outside the group. Why won't you think for yourself, O ye of little faith? Our fourth, O ye of little faith section is really hard to do. It goes against our core humanity, but it's necessary if you ever desire to walk consistently by the Spirit. Think for yourself separates you from the tribe, and nobody wants to be separated from the tribe. It's cold out there. At times we need our people. The tribe will save your life at times, but at other times the clan busts down our believing and holds us back from living our own life's calling. It's a pack mentality, a hive mentality. Some call it collective consciousness. It's human nature to go along with the pack even if it's not what we wanted deep down to do. But we all do it. Think about politics, sports teams, school spirit, race, country, culture, or middle school peer pressure. We go along with the pack because we want to fit in. We need to fit in. A month or so has now passed since Jesus and Peter walked on the water. This next little faith lesson happened just days before he took them on that field trip to the gates of hell at Caesarea Philippi. And maybe now you'll understand why Jesus had to expose them to Pan. Thousands of people had been camping out with Jesus and the boys for 3 days just to hear Jesus speak. It was a country jam without music. Jesus healed hundreds, maybe thousands of people during those days. They couldn't get enough of the Messiah. The problem was nobody planned on staying for 3 days. Nobody brought enough food. People were getting hangry. This fourth little faith training moment happened immediately after they had fed the 4,000 men plus women and children with 7 loaves and a few fish. The apostles collected 7 huge duffel bag-sized bags of leftovers from this miracle feeding. It was enough food to take care of them for a week. Thanks, God. They loaded their gear in the boat, shoved off, and sailed the 8 miles across the lake to the resort called Magdala on the western coast of the Sea of Galilee. Yes, it's the home city of Mary from Magdala. Might have heard of her. But the second they landed on the shore and got out of the boat, Jesus was surrounded by the local religious leaders. It's because people who had just come back from Jesus' country jam had already walked the shoreline home and started talking about the miracles. The religious people were pissed. The religious guys wanted to intimidate and taunt Jesus. Show us a sign, magic boy. They said horrible things to him. These religious guys were nasty. They want him to conform. So Jesus and the boys immediately hop back in the boat and head back to the other side of the lake. They don't want to be in Magdala with these religious idiots. Instead of directly confronting the religious guys, this time Jesus didn't engage. He just left and went back to where people wanted what he had to give. Matthew 16:5. And when his disciples were come to the other side, they had forgotten to take the bread. Then Jesus said unto them, Take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, It's because we have taken no bread. They thought that's why Jesus was saying that. Like sitting at an Italian mealtime, two conversations were going on at the same time. Jesus started talking about how to deal with the intimidating words from devilish religious leaders that stick in your heads, but his buddies were talking to each other about who forgot to load the food. It was your job to remember the leftovers, John. No, it was Simon's. Hey, I was pulling security detail. It was Matthew's job. Nope, I was taking notes. Wasn't my job. Hey, because he's being so quiet over there, it had to be Judas. Very funny, guys. Guilty dog barks first, Peter. Well, Jesus rolls his eyes and shakes his head, and you wonder why a man turns water into wine. Matthew 6:8, which when Jesus perceived, he said unto them, O ye of little faith, why reason ye among yourselves? Because ye brought no bread? Here's our fourth little faith flub, or should I call it unfinished believing. Once again, they had stopped listening to Jesus. The apostles' minds were elsewhere. Think food motivation. The thought of going without lunch caused them to go group blind. Now, believe it or not, but hunger limited how far they would take their believing. Hunger limited how far they were going to allow their believing to go there. Jesus called them out on their herd mentality and showed them how it had cut them off from a necessary spiritual lesson. Jesus also reminded them that even though they forgot the bread, they should have remembered lesson number 1, that God would always supply their need. Matthew 16:9, do ye not yet understand, neither remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000 and how many baskets ye took up, neither the 7 loaves of the 4,000 and how many baskets ye just took up? How is it that ye do not understand that I spake not to you concerning bread, but that ye should beware the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees? Then understood they how he bade them not beware of the leaven of bread or food, but the doctrine of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Jesus wasn't reproving them for leaving behind the 7 huge baskets of bread. He was trying to tell them that absolute power corrupts absolutely. That if you don't learn to deal with powerful people's negative words, they will corrupt you. Their words will change you. Now, sure, the group, the tribe, the pack adds safety. The herd is comfortable. But hive mentality can also blind us to what's really happening around us. It can bully us into thinking the way everyone else does. Look at the 2 sides of American politics. When our family just came back to the States from Japan, we moved to Texas. And I met a boy my age who seemed like the most interesting kid in the world. He could already rebuild a car engine, develop pictures in a darkroom, and race go-karts. Now all I could do is adjust the gears on my 10-speed bike and fight with my 5 siblings. Well, after a few weeks, I noticed that Walter was a bit of an outcast at school. All the other kids in school asked me why I hung out with him. They told me he was strange, a geek. He's a weirdo. But I liked him. I noticed that Walter didn't care if he fit in. He was a rebel in his own way. Well, sadly, I eventually gave in to the group pressure and distanced myself from Walter. And I still ache on the inside for giving in to the pack. That decision still haunts me even today. Group thinking can overpower the still small voice of God. Herd mentality will distract us from personal inspiration. Conforming when you don't want to will rot your soul. Have you ever had a great idea, a great friend, or a spiritual goal that you tossed aside because of what others said? I have. That's the lesson here. That's the 4th little faith blunder. Enjoy your group, but never let it override good manners, the Word, your life calling, your dream, or the Spirit of God. Sure, there's safety in a multitude of counselors, but there's also times when we need to think outside the group. Sometimes you must go against the will of the people in order to do what God has been trying to get you to do. If you won't, God will then have to find someone else to do what you were supposed to do. This time the apostles' group thinking shut down their minds to Jesus' teaching moment, which shut them down spiritually. Group thinking can be a believing buster, both for the individual and for the group. Their misplaced introspection was another traumatic mistake. The cure to group blindness is to not be afraid to think outside the group. Lesson number 5, grow your believing. Now, why are ye not putting in the time to grow your believing, O ye of little faith? Now, here's our final O ye of little faith lesson. This one's a biggie. It's graphic, explosive, and telling. It's multi-layered, multi-dimensional, and a bit frustrating. This record is for all you amazing, long-term, mature, and well-trained believers. Remember, the term, O ye of little faith, doesn't mean that it's believing that's small in size. It means believing that is short in duration. You didn't believe long enough. You didn't put in the time. This will make sense to you. We tend to think that because we're believers, because we have the Spirit of God, and because we once took a Bible class that taught about divine healing, that we're up for the challenge. But healing is not always that simple. It's not always that simple. If you've ever prayed for someone and they didn't get healed, if you've ever had a sick child or spouse or sibling that just wasn't getting better, no matter how many times you ministered to them, if you're at your wit's end with this healing thing, this next O ye of little faith section is for you. This is near the end of Jesus' earthly ministry. The disciples had been with Jesus for many months by now. They had seen and done everything imaginable. They were mature. At least they thought they were. This is not long after they got back from their training day in Paneas. Jesus, Peter, James, and John had just come down from the Mount of Transfiguration, where they saw and heard some amazing revelation from God. But the moment they walked back up to the other disciples, once again camping out near Paneas, they could tell something was wrong. The disciples looked whipped and flaccid. They were perplexed. People were whispering and pointing at them. You know, a man ran up to Jesus, gripping the arm of his wild and ragged-looking son, Matthew 17:14. And when they were come to the multitude, there came to him a certain man kneeling down to him, saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is a lunatic and sore vexed. For oft times he falleth into the fire and oft times into the water. Telling people that your kid is crazy possessed would be hard for any parent to do. 16, and I brought him unto thy disciples, and they could not cure him. Now the dad narks on the disciples, on the apostles. The 9 other apostles who didn't go up the mountain with Jesus had all tried to heal this boy, but they couldn't. They couldn't. In the past, they'd performed all kinds of signs and miracles and wonders many times over, but this situation seemed different. Now remember, they're back at the foot of Mount Hermon, once again right next to the area called the Gates of Hell, Pan's playground. The father of the boy suspected that there was something evil driving his son. It didn't take discerning spirits for him to know that, but he was in shock that none of the disciples, none of Jesus' apostles could heal his son. Now, according to the book of Mark, this kid was deaf, mute, and suicidal. He would pull away from his father, fall on the ground in fits and seizures, and when possible, he'd throw himself into a fire or try to drown himself in the river or lake. The kid was covered with scars and scary to look at. The demented boy and his desperate dad had been prayed over, ministered to, and had much of the word spoken to them by the apostles. To no avail, to no avail. Jesus walks up and takes over. Verse 17, Matthew 17:17. Then Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation. Or, come on, you guys, you're acting like freaking unbelievers. How long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you or have to put up with you? Bring him hither to me. This is sort of like in the second little faith record, where he expected the disciples to stop the storm on their own, but they waited for him to do it. This time the storm was a powerfully rooted devil spirit. Jesus needed his disciples to grow up, to mature their believing. Verse 18, and Jesus rebuked the devil, and he departed out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then came the disciples to Jesus apart and said, why could we not cast him out? They were confused. So they took Jesus aside and asked him why they couldn't cast out the devil spirit. And he could. Well, after all, they had done it 100 times. Verse 20, and Jesus said unto them, because of your unbelief. Now most texts read oligopistos, or short-term faith, short-term believing. For verily I say unto you, he looks at them, if ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. This is Jesus' final little faith lesson on expanding our faith and growing our believing. His final post-traumatic growth teaching point. The mustard seed example is usually taught something like, even with a tiny little speck of believing, you can move mountains. And we all love to hear that, I do. But the context is growth over time, not the size of our believing. A tiny little mustard seed can over time and in the right conditions grow into a massive shrub reaching 9 feet tall. It's huge. Jesus needed his apostles to grow their believing, to grow their faith. He knows he will be gone in a few weeks, and then his ministry will be up to them. Up to them. Take the time. Start small to grow big. Start small to grow big. Do you feel like you're ready to handle the big things? Are you ready to do the big healings? Do acts of big faith? Are you ready to see those mightier works? Then start with being ultra faithful to the things you can control right now. Grow your believing habit. Stick with diet and exercise is an easy place to start. Or how about just picking up after yourself? How about never speaking a negative about yourself again? It's a good one. The key to getting started on growing your believing is to just get started. Maybe just start praying for people. I've seen Josephine literally run across the room and dive her whole body on an overly large man who just stopped breathing on our couch. She grabbed his collar and shook him and prayed out loud. He started breathing again. The next day at the hospital, he died twice more on the table and had to be revived with the paddles. But Randy lived 10 more years after that. Just get started. Just get started. Get involved. Little habits grow into big habits. Handle the small stuff and the big stuff will take care of itself. If you want to take on those big spiritual healings and deliverance, then start by making small positive changes. Make believing a habit. Like any athlete, training will get you ready for the game. You want to see even bigger signs and miracles and wonders? Then you've got to make this believer thing a full-on lifestyle. Not just in your head, not just for show, not just when you feel it. This brings us to our key verse for the day. Verse 21, howbeit this kind goeth not out but by prayer and fasting. They couldn't cast out that deeply rooted monster of a spirit because they hadn't put in the time to grow, to build their believing. Prayer and fasting are still great ways to build believing focus. Both take incredible long-term focus. Don't we normally keep praying for someone until they get better or have their need met? Sure. Also, for centuries, people have known the benefits of fasting can be enormous. Fasting improves your metabolism, accelerates fat loss, resets the immune system, lowers inflammation, strengthens your cardiovascular system, and boosts our brain function. The disclaimer, if you're a diabetic or on medications, talk to your doctor before you start fasting. That demented kid had a spirit that was so powerful that even the apostles in training could not cast it out. Plus, Mark 9:23 points out they'd been fighting against the dad's lack of believing. It must have been a traumatic and embarrassing lesson for the apostles. God knows when you're ready. God knows when you're ready, when you're ready to take on the big stuff. But so does the adversary. Put in the time to grow your believing and be aware of bad attitudes around you. Take on those challenges that are right at the edge of your comfort zone so that when the really hard stuff comes at you, you'll be ready. God never gives you more than you can handle. We know this. This ends the 5th lesson, our final underdeveloped faith warning. Finally, how can we enjoy some post-traumatic growth? Or post-traumatic growth is that positive personal change that happens after we struggle through a very hard life event, a personal failure, or some sort of trauma, and come out better on the other side. 1, don't stress so much about the material things you want. God knows what you need, and He will always supply. We will have, all we have to do is trust God and push our believing boundaries. 2, avoid getting tangled up in the spirit of fear by hesitating when we should be acting. Stop waiting for others to do what we know we should be doing. 3, don't second guess your miracle. God really is that big, and so are you. 4, be bold enough to think outside the group. Groupthink can shut you down spiritually and make you a shell of who God designed you to be. And 5, put in the time and hard work to grow your faith by developing a vast and dynamic prayer life. And for God's sake, take better care of yourself. That's prayer and fasting. This is how we put in the time to build our believing so we can all enjoy some much needed post-traumatic growth. God bless you all.